Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M. Wolverine. Now to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a SHIELD operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste. Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new vampire king. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable.
Number 5. X-Man. I mean, when you have the power of someone like X-Man, it's impossible for you to not be considered unstoppable. X-Man is a reality warping mutant and superhero. He's extremely powerful when it comes to telepathic abilities and telekinetic abilities. Although he isn't always operating on the side of, straight up good, with his morals sometimes getting a little wonky, I would say, like when he thought that, removing love from the world would somehow fix it. At the end of the day, he is generally trying to be a hero and do what he thinks is best. Nate Gray, as he's known, is not from the main continuity, but actually hails from the reality of Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse, and then he kinda got sucked into the main continuity. In the AOA reality, which stands for Age of Apocalypse respectively, he was created by that world's version of Mr. Sinister, known simply there as Sinister. However, Gray would escape Sinister and end up being raised by mutant hero and one of my fave mutants in general, Forge. So, that Gray in general is going to act as a hero because he was raised by one of the best heroes, I'd say. When he did decide to take control of the world, becoming its god and shaping it into what he thought it should be, he was only threatened by basically all of mutant kind coming together to try and stop him. And even then, they failed. That was the only threat that he had, and he was like, well, dealt with that. Of course, while this all sounds kinda evil, becoming basically a tyrant and kinda conquering the world, this was actually done by Nate to fix the world, so it's not as bad as it sounds, really. He was like, look, I'm gonna die soon, and I feel like if I'm gonna die, I need to fix everything. So here I go, I'm gonna try to fix it. And then people were like, yeah, we don't really like when you try to just fix things, Nate. And he was like, okay, well, fair enough, fair enough. Number 4, Deadpool. Deadpool is so unstoppable, it's annoying. He has actively destroyed the Marvel universe before, killing everyone in it. He was so determined to escape a world that he no longer believed was real. Deadpool is also an immortal being thanks to his healing factor, and for a while thanks to the curse that Thanos put on him. Yeah, that's a true story. Deadpool was getting a little too cozy with death, and Thanos did not like that. That's because Thanos has always had a thing for Mistress Death, and is always trying to win her favor so that they can one day be together. Maybe one day. Thanos has an unhealthy obsession with death, I would say. So Thanos, when his potential future relationship status was threatened, decided to curse Deadpool so that he couldn't die, thereby preventing him ending up with Death and keeping the two of them apart. Deadpool for a while was human, and it was during this time that Wade Wilson became a lot more squishy, and I suppose stoppable. But even then, he didn't end up dying, but instead would be reverted back to getting his powers, going from handsome mortal Wade Wilson back to kinda ugly, unkillable Wade Wilson. Oh my gosh. When are we getting the Immortal Deadpool book, I wonder? That could be a whole book. Someone write that. Mortal Deadpool. Number 3, Magneto. I mean, Magneto literally kept himself alive through sheer willpower and massive control of his powers. I think that means he deserves his spot on this list. And for those who might think, yeah, but is Magneto a hero, Amanda? I would say that you could argue for him being on either side, really, hero and villain. Magneto throughout most of modern comics has been villain and hero, but he also kept his blood pumping without a heart to face off against Uranos, which was a heroic feat. So even if you perhaps disagree with my categorization of him on this list, I think you at least have to give him some hero props for doing that, and perhaps at least, I would say a good amount of hero points. Hero points that Magneto has truthfully been racking up over the years, especially recently in the comics. After initially facing Uranos, Magneto was left for dead, which was a mistake on Uranos' part to assume this during the AXE Judgment Day event. As we've learned from Zombieland, you always gotta double tap, aka confirm that kill. It is important, especially if you're facing off against Magneto. Uranos did not follow this rule, assuming Magneto was dead after he took his heart, and as a result, Magneto came back to finish him. Magneto basically used his powers to keep his blood moving throughout his body by controlling the small bits of iron in his bloodstream to basically keep it pumping without having an actual organ to do it for him. Literally heartless Magneto, which sounds terrifying. Later, using all his strength and a power boost from Storm, Magneto was able to defeat the Eternal Villain before he passed away. But I'm sure he'll be back eventually because he is Magneto and he's a pretty great character, so. Number 2, Wolverine. I would say Wolverine is probably one of the most unstoppable heroes that we have over at Marvel Comics. He is a master tracker and is determined when it comes to defeating whoever stands in his way, or when it comes to saving the day. And even when he ends up being brainwashed and used as a weapon, he ends up not letting that stop him, at least not in the main continuity. Although in some of those alternate worlds, he definitely has been brainwashed to the point that he had to be put down. And by Kitty Pryde, no less, in one of them. Ugh, that hurts my heart. That being said, even in alternate worlds where he has become like Lord of the Vampires, he was able and willing to rise up to defeat his fellow evil brethren, even though he knew it would also mean his own death as well, potentially. That's how determined Wolverine is. He's also virtually unkillable. Well, I guess unless you drown him. But even then, Wolverine has fallen into oceans and washed up miles off on another shore unscathed, so for a man that can still be drowned, I mean, he does pretty well to make it out alive of those underwater situations. Number 1. Hulk. I mean, we can't do a list like this and not talk about Hulk, am I right? The Hulk is not just a powerful hero, but he's also a stubborn and determined one. We've seen this shine through not just in his Hulk persona, but also as Bruce Banner before as well, but especially as the Hulk. Let's turn to World War Hulk as an example. In this story, Hulk was shot off planet by the Illuminati and ended up in Sakaar. He not only rose above being a gladiator, helping to lead a rebellion and an uprising, but after Sakaar was destroyed from a ship exploding, Hulk was determined to get back at those who had sent him there in the first place, and then later seemingly ruined his happiness, even though that isn't quite what happened, but that's what the Hulk thought happened, and that's all that really matters. He returns to Earth to get revenge on the Illuminati, and he proves just how deadly he can be. It also goes to show us why you really do not want to make the Hulk angry, because he might just squash you like a bug. He threatens the lives of some of the greatest heroes. When it comes to confronting even Professor X, Hulk manages to take on the mutants who come to his aid, and single-handedly does so, not being defeated by a physical show of power, but instead kinda by a speech about how the mutants, don't really deserve his ire. When it comes to Bruce Banner, we've seen his unstoppable nature as is showcased in the recent Hulk series by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley, where Bruce turns Hulk's body into his own spaceship, and his mind into the ship's engine, with Bruce remaining in control at the helm, which is pretty crazy. Also, I mean, Bruce kinda took on Thor in a fight at one point and was like, look, I might be Bruce Banner, but give me all the information about how the Hulk fights. I'm a smart guy and I can use that knowledge to basically face off with the Hulk.
Coming in at number 10 is Captain America. No, Captain America is not near the top of the power hierarchy of Avenger heroes, not by a long shot, but it's not his power that makes him unstoppable, it's his willpower. Captain America just never gives up or backs down when he believes in what he is fighting for. This is one of the big reasons that Steve Rogers has been the leading man of the Avengers, that and his genius tactical mind and his leadership skills. Almost all the Marvel heroes and even some of the Marvel villains will shut up and listen when Captain America speaks, even when those heroes and villains are leagues and bounds above Steve in terms of their power. In addition to all that, Captain America is one of the longest lasting and most popular of the Marvel heroes, and that fact also lends him some points in the unstoppability factor on the publishing side of Marvel heroes. But on top of all of that, Captain America is one hell of a fighter and is incredibly tough with his super soldier serum, bringing him to the very tippy top of the human conditioning and making him a physically perfect human, which has allowed him to withstand some pretty brutal attacks, being frozen in ice for decades, and has virtually stopped his aging. And at number 9 is Spider-Man. Just like Captain America, Spider-Man has the absolute god level of power known as popularity. He is essentially the face of Marvel Comics, and almost everyone who just knows of comic books knows of Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man has been defeated and even lost his life, like how he is technically currently not alive, but he always comes back, and there is a very low possibility that he will ever be brought down for good. Plus, now we have Miles Morales as well, who is going to share this spot on the list, even if he's got a few abilities that Peter doesn't have. Spider-Man has got more than popularity though. He is also very inspiring, actually really strong, and incredibly intelligent. He is seen and respected as one of the most righteous and brave heroes around, and his heroic attitude, sense of responsibility, almost perfect moral compass, and quick wit make him beloved by not only fans but other heroes and even some villains. But above all of that, it's his willpower that I think makes him truly unstoppable. Even in the face of certain deaths, Spider-Man will always get back to his feet, which has allowed him to use his incredible abilities to perform truly incredible feats. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man possesses the proportional powers of a spider, but he's done things that even a human-sized spider would not be able to do, and his spider sense gives him an edge in battle, and that combined with his other abilities has made him next to unstoppable. And at number 8 is Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm another person. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the bursting process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he exceeded this, and his strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's even been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match, but what most know him for is his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue is about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York City, Luke Cage is the bulwark. And at number 7 is Wolverine. Of course, an overly aggressive and angry Canadian will make this list. An angry Canadian is already such a rare occurrence that they have to be pretty strong, and Wolverine definitely is. Most people are well aware of Wolverine's abilities thanks to Hugh Jackman, but I am honor bound to explain them anyways. There are 2 things that make Wolverine practically unstoppable. The first would be his adamantium lace skeleton and by extension, his claws. While not a natural occurrence, Wolverine was subjected to the Weapon X program, and for him, he was given the adamantium which bonded to his skeleton, infusing it with his bones, which makes them virtually unbreakable. It also makes his claws razor sharp and gives him added weight and velocity when throwing punches and kicks. Now, if someone were to ever break his bones, which is pretty much impossible, it wouldn't really matter because one of his natural mutations is a healing factor that is only outmatched by a few other characters in the Marvel universe. His healing factor has allowed him to survive a nuclear explosion, being completely crushed by a steamroller, having his heart torn out, brutal and bloody fights with Sabretooth. He has even recovered from a single drop of blood, but he was being powered up at that time. His skeleton and his healing factor are just compounded by incredible senses, superhuman attributes, and general tough guy attitude to make him a pretty unstoppable member of the Avengers and more. And at number 6 is Ghost Rider. Everybody loves Ghost Rider. Doesn't matter who it is, a flaming skull and a flaming mount is just always cool. But not only is he really cool, he's quite a hardy fella. He is essentially impervious to almost all forms of normal damage, or the damage he has sustained, like having his head completely obliterated, didn't actually matter since he just instantly reformed it and didn't even feel it. The Ghost Rider has tanked hits from the Hulk on multiple different occasions and was one of the main heroes called in when Hulk returned for his vengeance on the Illuminati. Since his body becomes a flaming skeleton, most projectiles just pass straight through him or bounce off of his incredibly strong bones. The only things that have ever been shown to actually hurt him are heaven-forged or blessed weapons. Also, because of the divine or demonic energies that empower him, he can basically feel no fatigue or pain of any kind, and if anything were to actually damage him, he can recover from his injuries insanely quickly, almost instantly. But all that combined with his hellfire, soul, and sim manipulation, demonic magic, fallible penance stare, and other insane abilities makes Ghost Rider someone who most villains, and even heroes, fear even on their best days. Number 5. Death Mask Deadpool. When Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, comes up with a revolutionary new method for dealing with cancer, he removes a tumor from Wade Wilson's head. What I think no one expected was that removing this tumor had the side effect of making Wade's insanity completely disappear. Deadpool suddenly becomes hyper intelligent, and his insanity instead turns him into becoming a super criminal with a super criminal empire. Now going by Death Wish and looking a hell of a lot like Dr. Doom, Wade basically as Dr. Doom, taking his place as King of Latveria and wearing a super sweet death mask armor. He plans to attack the alternate Earth 616 Deadpool, but when he's defeated, he goes and makes a deal with Mephisto to unleash a literal hell on his Earth. Number 4. Captain Universe Pool. In the comic Deadpool v Thanos, in the Patchwork Battle World, Thanos and Deadpool team up to look for Lady Death. It turns out that the entity had been kidnapped by a rival cosmic force, Eternity. And it turns out that Eternity is pretty peeved about being ridiculed and separated by the Infinity Gems and Galactus' hunger and the Annihilation Wave and Death's Embrace. I don't know. The In-Betweener comes in to talk some sense into Eternity, but meanwhile Deadpool sees an opportunity and tries freeing Mistress Death, which didn't go so smoothly, and a fight breaks out. Thanos betrays Deadpool and starts to completely pummel Eternity, a cosmic entity, which makes no sense to me. Deadpool attacks Thanos, who simply throws the Merc with the mouth into Eternity. Now this is where it starts to get wacky, apparently. Inside the cosmic being, Wade meets the Unipower, who bestows that power onto Wade, and boom, enter Captain Universe Deadpool. With his newfound power, he was able to go blow for blow with a death-powered Thanos. Deadpool doesn't technically win, but Death is able to see the error of her ways, and she takes back her power from Thanos, causing Grimace to explode. Nice. Number 3. Lady Pool. Wanda Wilson is the Deadpool of Earth 3010. But since she is one of a very few female Deadpools, she naturally is titled Lady Pool. Lady Deadpool joined the side of a group of rebels fighting against loyalists in the United States in her own universe, that were led by Lady Pool's nemesis, General America. Yes, that's Captain America, but a general. According to Wanda, the fight started when fascists in the federal government started to impose their will on the people. As a result, a schism in Congress occurred, generals took sides, and states declared independence, which led to the current predicament. Eventually, she is assisted by 616 Deadpool, and she ends up becoming a main part of the good Deadpool Corps. And eventually, she becomes the leader of that group, sacrificing herself and the Corps' ship in a fight against the evil Deadpool Corps and Galactus Pool. Number 2. Ultimate Deadpool. The Ultimate Universe has a lot of fresh takes on 616 heroes, but Deadpool got some rather unique changes that I'm not sure how I feel about, honestly. It's giving me strong X-Men Origins Wolverine vibes, which came out 3 years after this comic, so I'm not saying this comic inspired whatever they did to Deadpool in that movie, but I can't say that it didn't. Just saying, pointing that out. The Ultimate Marvel version of Deadpool was a sergeant in the military named Wade Wilson. He's grim, he's angry, he's way too serious, and he's also an incredibly racist mutant hater. Oh, he was also a cyborg with incredible strength, retained his signature healing factor, and instead of just being disfigured, he had no skin at all, and is missing parts of his skull. So his head instead is encased in a clear plastic helmet for everyone to see. Yay! Deadpool leads the Reavers, who are also pretty horrible in trying to take out prominent mutants, but on live television, like it was for sport or something. Thankfully, Ultimate Deadpool was taken off of the board by 616 Deadpool and Deadpool Kills Deadpool in 2013. Deadpool. Number 1. Dreadpool. In the Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe storyline, Deathpool murders every single superhero there is in his quest to end all of creation. Deathpool even rises against the divine powers that created the Marvel Universe, meaning the literal writers, and he won. We're introduced to this character being dragged to Psycho Man by the X-Men in an attempt to cure Wade of his insanity. Psycho Man's procedure silenced all the voices in Deadpool's head, but brought out a new one, the Ultimate Murderer. This voice is aware of himself being a fictional character and is adamantly convinced that his only salvation is to kill everything there is. Dreadpool went on a complete killing spree, ending the lives of the X-Men, the Avengers, Dr. Doom, Taskmaster, Thanos, and Galactus, but he didn't stop there. The Ultimate Murderer persona had gone so far that he decided to eradicate other versions of himself, namely the 616 Deadpool. Dreadpool and Deadpool each made their own Deadpool cores, assembled from alternate Deadpools throughout the multiverse, and they went head to head. But you can read that for yourself.
Number 10. Beast. Beast is probably one of the most unstoppable characters at Marvel Comics right now. And while technically still a hero, so relevant to this list in terms of his classification between being a goodie and a baddie in general, he still has been up to some pretty questionable things in order to protect Krakoa, including basically turning Wolverine into a mindless slave. On the more optimistic side of Hank's history though, we also see an example of how unstoppable he can be in terms of his ability to seek out knowledge and never give up. After House of M, Beast for a good while was focused on finding a way to restore mutant kind and bring back the mutants they had lost in the aftermath, thanks to Wanda's reality warping magic. Hank tried everything from science to mysticism, but in the end was sadly unsuccessful. However, he still searched far and wide for a very long time, which I think should get him some unstoppable points. I think he also even created an organization just to like figure that problem out, so yeah. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us that you love us by giving this video a thumbs up.
And at 9, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is the son of Reed and Sue Richards from the Fantastic Four, obviously. I don't feel like I needed to say it, but I still needed to say it. And even while like currently or like in the actual real present year of the comics, he's a toddler, he's still an absolute powerhouse, and I'm gonna count him, okay? Especially since the freaking Celestials have deemed this kid beyond Omega level on like the scale of mutant based powers. Cause you know, when a future version of yourself comes to your present and then manages to bend Galactus to their will, making Galactus Franklin's herald, I don't think there's much else that they can really do aside from just accept it. Hey, that's like 100%ing life. There's nothing you can do after that, which I think speaks for itself. This kid is able to tear the universe apart with a single thought in essence, probably making him the scariest damn toddler on the face of the earth and the galaxy, aside from eventually when I have mine, because that will be the spawn of Satan. And that's also coming from someone who already thinks that toddlers are scary. Alright, you should have seen that one who was trying to stab me with safety scissors. That was a time. Gotta love Tuesdays. Also, according to the history of the Marvel Universe, like the book, Franklin Richards is supposed to survive until the end of his universe and then pass on to the next one, like Galactus did, which is insane. Dude was born from a girl who can go invisible and a guy who can stretch. Jeez.
Number 8, Moon Girl. Friends, I just read the Moon Girl team up with the X-Men, which continues her journey on the hunt for Devil Dinosaur, who has been dino-napped, and it was way too cute, and I have to include her, so sorry but not sorry. Also, Moon Girl does not get enough love, and Luna Lafayette, she's pretty unstoppable, let's be honest. Not only does she succeed in rescuing Devil Dinosaur in her team-up series, and as such will be returning with her own series with her dino pal in tow, which I recently picked up the first issue of, although I haven't read it yet, but she also has solved problems that have stumped many genius level individuals in the Marvel Universe. Moon Girl was smart enough to find a way to almost single-handedly destroy the Terrigen Mists, when that threatened basically a war between the Inhumans and the mutants. I mean, granted, there were others who were kind of trying to puzzle it out before her and succeeding at least somewhat in that, but it was really Moon Girl that made the destruction of the Mists possible in the short time the heroes had left to rectify the conflict between the two sides. And while her instantly fixing Forge's work may have irked a lot of comic book fans, I will say it did show just how brilliant Moon Girl is, because Forge is literally one of the best inventors that we have at Marvel Comics in terms of his intellect and his know-how, so that just goes to show you basically how cool Moon Girl is. I don't really see it as a downside, but I understand. I love Forge too, so it is a little like, oh, my heart.
And at 7, Spider-Man. No matter what Spider-Man or Spider-Person you're referring to, none of them will ever be stopped in the grand scheme of things, alright? Not only is Peter alone an insanely resilient individual, but that's part of the whole Spider-Person identity. Getting back up no matter how many times you get knocked down or no matter how hard you hit the mat. Which is why Spider-Man is Marvel's most popular character, or well, one of the reasons. Which is yet another reason why he's unstoppable. Because why would Marvel end a character that is just making them mad bank? Spider-Man's introduction in essence resurrected the MCU in a time where people thought that Civil War was going to be lame, and now seemingly the driving force behind it, since the majority of the OGs have retired or were killed or sacrificed themselves or whatever. Spider-Man is a powerhouse in a ton of industries, and that plot armor is going to be more powerful than anything Tony Stark could ever make for him. Cosmic Spider-Man was awesome and something I want to cosplay, but the plot armor is truly the most powerful version of this character. Plus the whole thing where he has to actively pull his punches, otherwise, you know, we'll have a whole Andrew Garfield situation. And then when he threatened the Kingpin, because, you know, if things had gone another way, nobody would have been able to stop him. He would have just I would have liked to see that though.
Number 6. Colossus. I mean, it's literally in Colossus's name at one point, hence why he has to make our cut and why he takes one of our top spots. Colossus is known for being the unstoppable Colossus in Marvel's Contest of Champions, but also in the comics during the Fear Itself event when he became the Avatar of Sidorak for a time, replacing Cain Marko. In fact, whenever Colossus is the Avatar of Sidorak, that's what we call him, Unstoppable Colossus, because Juggernaut is Unstoppable Juggernaut. And if you have his card in Marvel Snap, it is easy to see why we consider him to be so unstoppable just in general. Sorry, I'm obsessed with Marvel Snap lately, so it's probably going to be mentioned now and then in our videos. Even though we are not sponsored by Marvel Snap, to be clear, but we should be. I love that game. In Snap, Colossus's card ability isn't ongoing. He cannot be moved, destroyed, or have his power reduced. And he comes by this card ability honestly, as even in the comics, Colossus is known for being an unstoppable force.
5. Phoenix Force Spider-Man. Okay, so this is a slightly more confusing pick for this list. Most fans of Marvel Comics know that the Phoenix Force is an incredibly powerful entity within the universe, essentially the embodiment of life itself. Many characters have played the role of hosts for the Phoenix Force, and not always with the best outcomes. But Spider-Man wielding the immense power of the Phoenix Force first appeared in a comic in Spider-Man number 25 in 1990. Now unfortunately though, this was later revealed to just be an illusion. But since it was so incredibly awesome to see, it inspired another appearance. However, this time it was taken by a video game. Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro, which actually saw Peter Parker wielding the Phoenix Force with real Phoenix Force powers. It's not comic books, but it happened, so it's kinda cool. Number 4. Cosmic Spider-Man. There was a point in time when Peter Parker of Earth 616 absorbed the Enigma Force and became the most powerful version of Spider-Man we have ever even seen. Even capable of punching the Hulk into orbit. Now in the mainline continuity, he doesn't have it for very long, but on Earth 13, he kept the powers and became the hero Captain Universe. So this Peter Parker has all the usual Spider-Man powers, but also now has cosmic awareness, energy manipulation, giving him energy blasts and flight. He can manipulate matter, making his webs as strong as adamantium, or even changing their shape altogether. He has fought and wiped the floor with some truly strong foes like Thor, Graviton, and of course the Hulk, and he never truly hit his upper limit of strength and power, even when he cleaned up all the oceans and threw all the Earth's trash into the sun. His universe became a safe haven for all the Spider-Men and Spider-Women in the multiverse when the Inheritors were hunting them down, because Captain Universe could defeat them, and his cosmic powers are gone when he leaves this dimension. Now unfortunately, he is consumed by Solus, who was allowed to get a hold of him and used his powers against him in Amazing Spider-Man number 11 in 2014, but if we don't think about that, we just look at all the other stuff, pretty powerful. Pretty unstoppable. Number 3. Cosmic Comic Spider-Man. Now look, I've talked about this version of Spider-Man a few times, and I'm sorry if it's getting old, but it's cool. The comic he appears in is actually just a guide on how to read comic books, and through the course of the story, it basically becomes a love letter to comic books themselves. It's really good if you love comic books, you should definitely check it out. In How to Read Comics the Marvel Way, issues 1 to 4, the comic itself becomes a character, and it starts off trying to teach the reader how exactly to read comics. The comic follows Spider-Man in a conflict with Mysterio, who found the Cosmic Comic, the same one speaking to us, in the basement of the Natural History Museum. It allowed Mysterio to freeze Spider-Man in time in a comic panel, turn inanimate objects to life, and increase his size. Now after causing more problems by tearing the comic book in half, Peter Parker eventually learns that he himself is a comic book character. He can see all of time laid out as a comic panel. He trapped Mysterio in an airline passenger safety card, which is essentially a comic book if you think about it, and then he pulled him out of that comic. He created comic book shops to combat the dip in popularity of comics themselves, and he even breaks the fourth wall and begins to talk to the reader. Essentially, Spider-Man temporarily had control over comic books themselves, which if you think about it, is similar to, but even more powerful than the ability of a comic book character to warp reality. Number 2. Power of Love Spider-Man. Okay, so this isn't really an alternate version of Spider-Man. This is still 616 Peter, but merged with the nexus of all realities, gaining enough power to fight the Outrider. The story is actually a little difficult to follow and understand. It took me some time, so it may be because I'm just lacking in brain cells, or it may be that it's all very convoluted and the art isn't exactly clear. So, if I get any information here wrong, feel free to correct me. please. But as for the power Spider-Man possesses here, he doesn't actually do much, aside from facing Outrider, that is, if you consider not doing much as destroying and recreating multiple different universes in order to save all of creation. So he does a lot. And that sentence alone does kind of speak volumes about the power that Spider-Man possessed for a little while. The story is in Peter Parker's Spider-Man Annual #1, and you should definitely check it out so that you can figure out everything I just said, because I think I messed it up. Number 1, Beyonder Spider-Man. For this point, we are talking about regular old Peter Parker from Spider-Man and Secret Wars #4, when he temporarily gains the powers of the Beyonder. Now before Dr. Doom was granted the Beyonder's powers in Secret War, the Beyonder power actually went to 2 others. Once the power left the Beyonder himself, it actually went straight to Wolverine, who absolutely could not handle the power at all, so he almost immediately bestowed it onto Spider-Man. With this power, Spider-Man turns Doc Ock into plants, he obliterates a big group of villains, easily rips apart Ultron, literally stomps on the Molecule Man, and defeats Galactus with his fists. He brings a city from the 32nd century into the modern day, creating a new Parker City. He saves Uncle Ben on like 3 separate occasions, just bringing him back to life, like through reality. But then we learn that all this happened in like 1/100000th of a second before Dr. Doom took the power back for himself, which is the way it ended up being and was supposed to be the whole way.
Number 10, Iron Man. I mean, Tony is just a man, but he is still a very determined man, and he's willing to put everything on the line when it comes to saving the day or fighting for what he believes in. A few examples of this can be seen from both the comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man ends up being the one to wear the Infinity Gauntlet, snapping to defeat Thanos as the heroes make their final stand. He knows he won't survive this, but it's up to him in the end to save the day, and he's willing to give his life to stop Thanos and prevent him from once more erasing 50% of the universe's population with a snap. During Civil War in the comics, Iron Man also exhibits how committed he can be to a cause, when he believes the best way to prevent civilian casualties is by basically reining in superheroes, having them register and in essence work for the government. His beliefs are so strong that while other heroes disagree with his methods, he is willing to go to war over it, starting the first civil war against the superheroes that disagree, who are led by a man who believes in freedom among all else and knows all too well what it's like to be a government pawn. Captain America's Steven Rogers. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we're doing here at Top 10 Nerd and you need more Marvel content in your life, be sure to check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for that. Number 9, Doctor Strange. Even when Doctor Strange died, he didn't let that defeat him. In Death of Doctor Strange, Strange comes back to investigate his own death and solve his own murder. Well, a version of him does anyways. And the amazing thing is that he also seems to have left clues for his alternate self to solve the murder. In the end, when Clea attempts to call him back before accepting the role of Sorcerer Supreme as Doctor Strange's wife, Strange, however, says he cannot return because he knows what it will cost, and that it breaks basically laws of magic. Despite the fact that Strange is a hero who gets things done, he has also learned how to be unstoppably loyal to the rules of magic. This is probably because he is known to have broken these rules on a few occasions to varying degrees of success, I'd say. Sometimes it works, other times doing so only creates more problems, as we also see in Doctor Strange's journey in regards to his MCU stories and counterparts. In the MCU, Strange was willing to break some rules to help Peter get into school by making the world forget that he was actually Spider-Man. But due to Peter's constant add-ons in regards to who was actually allowed to remember, Strange lost control of that spell, splitting a crack in the multiverse. But alternatively, when facing off against the Scarlet Witch, he did allow himself to use an alternate copy of the Darkhold to dreamwalk in his own alternate universe's corpse, breaking several rules in order to defeat Wanda. Then again, he probably knew, like, this is like, I gotta break some rules here. I'm hoping it'll all work out in the end. I mean, I think Strange knew, like, I could do this and it'll be worth it. Number 8, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers' whole motto is basically about being unstoppable. Higher, further, faster, baby. Well, it's about being unstoppable and of course, flying. Carol loves to fly. Even when an alternate version of her shows up on God Emperor Doom's battle world during Secret Wars, where she is given a life that she should seemingly love, this version of Carol becomes suspicious of Doom and ends up rebelling, questioning if what he tells her about the sky is actually true. This lines up perfectly with the type of hero Carol is in the main reality as well. During Secret Wars, the Captain Marvel of Earth 616 was one of the heroes on the life raft who had been preserved to the end of the multiverse and rebelled as well against Doom to try and reset the multiverse back to normal. normal, which happens after Reed gets control of the Beyonders' powers, winning them back in a battle against Doom and using them along with the help from his family to rebuild the Marvel multiverse. Aside from that, Carol in the main continuity has also lost her memories multiple times and even died and been resurrected, and she hasn't ever let any of that stop her from doing what needs to be done in terms of heroics. Captain Marvel also happens to be one of the most powerful superheroes out there in Marvel Comics. She's got a ton of combat experience, military experience, pilot experience, and can survive in the vacuum of space. Number 7. Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel is one of the Superman-like characters that Marvel has to offer us. In fact, I would argue of the characters that we have in that category that are like DC Superman, he is one of the most underrated and often understated for how powerful he truly is. Adam Brashear, as he is known, is actually powered by antimatter, in essence becoming a living, breathing antimatter or negative reactor. The antimatter that he harnesses comes from the negative zone, which is why we might refer to him as a negative reactor as an alternate to an antimatter reactor. But he isn't a negative character, just the opposite. He is an amazingly powerful positive character, a superhero. Blue Marvel got his powers way back in the day and has actually been an active hero since the 60s in terms of the comics inner timeline. However, he didn't end up staying as one throughout his history due to the fact that he was black, with President John F. Kennedy heartbreakingly even asking him to retire from heroics because tensions were running high and America just wasn't ready for a black superhero at that time. Fortunately, they're ready now. Which is also great because we need a hero like Blue Marvel who isn't just unstoppable because of his nigh invulnerability, strength, and ability to manipulate energy, but also because he happens to be a super genius as well. And while some might take his temporary retirement as Blue Marvel giving up, really he was more just biding his time. A decade later he would once again return to heroics, joining the mighty Avengers of the 1970s. So he also wasn't out for really that long, fortunately. Number 6. Namor. While some might have more power than Namor behind their mighty fists, I would argue that Namor tends to be even more stubborn and determined a lot of the time. He isn't one to back down, and generally a good speech doesn't really cut it for making him stop whatever it is he's doing. Although he also probably wouldn't attack mutant kind since, you know, he is a mutant. But then again, if mutant kind did something to harm Atlantis, he might. Namor is a mutant, but first and foremost he is a ruler, believing in fighting for his people and their underwater nation. Case in point, when Krakoa first emerged and he was actually approached to join and acknowledge the country, but he decided to reject their offer to join the nation as a mutant. Although I imagine Atlantis would still recognize Krakoa, but I can't remember for certain if that's been mentioned in anything that I've read. Let me know in the comments if you know if Atlantis has acknowledged Krakoa yet. Namor is also in his own right a powerhouse, and while he might not be as well known for his strength as someone say like the Hulk, he also has shared a place on the Defenders team, with him proving how undeniably powerful he is to have earned that place. In fact, the Defenders remains one of the most powerful teams at Marvel, so typically anyone who makes the cut should be considered pretty OP.
Number 5. Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for sure. Number 4. Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, Damn! Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3, Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2, General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's Expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god-on-mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banished the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, it's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than old King Thor himself. Number 10, Swordsman. When the world's heroes gave up their lives in order to destroy the villain Onslaught, what they didn't know is that Franklin Richards had subconsciously created a pocket universe to save everyone. No one knew of this, and they spent an entire year on this counter-Earth reliving their new lives as heroes reborn, because that was the name of the comic. One of these heroes that seemed to be native to this pocket universe was a guy by the name of Swordsman. Swordsman was a member of the Avengers, and he was with them in their fights with Loki, Kang, and the Hulk, and eventually he became the last Avenger when the other Avengers went back to Earth 616. Now sadly, Swordsman ended up getting cancer, and in an effort to keep the world safe, he created a new team of heroes called the Remnants, leading them under his new name, Deadpool. Unfortunately, he had to retire from superheroing because of the cancer, but then, in a sudden twist, Deadpool/Swordsman learns that his entire reality and everyone in it is actually just the fabrication of a young boy named Franklin, and he goes absolutely mad and wants to destroy the entire dimension. He steals a SHIELD helicarrier filled with nuclear boom booms, and then launches all of them at the Watcher's Citadel on the moon, riding one of them along the way. Turns out he actually creates a tear in space and time and meets an evil core of Deadpool's, and he joins up. Number 9. Kidpool. I am putting Kidpool on this list for pretty much one reason. 2 words. Lightsabers. Technically, it's one word, just let me live. Anyone who wields a lightsaber is automatically just better, okay? And when that person is a pre-puberty Wade Wilson, and he wields not just one, but 2 lightsabers, is beautiful. Hailing from Earth 10330, Wade Wilson was a new student of the Xavier Orphanage for Troubled Boys, and he really was a troubled boy. Unfortunately, this means he was a little bit of a loner. He got put in detention with a kid version of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and so Wade and Scott decided to team up and escape from detention and go crash the prom so Scott could be with Jean Grey. At the prom, Wade ended up getting into a battle of fisticuffs with the kid-sized version of Logan, aka Wolverine, and the fight made the prom come to a halt and saw Kidpool get embarrassed in front of all the other kids. So he decided to leave, but just when that happened, he was confronted by 616 Deadpool and joined up with his good guy Deadpool core. Number 8. Hulkpool. Hulked Out Heroes is a nice, sweet little 2-issue comic that is honestly just the best. Basically, MODOK and the leader had gamma mutated a few pretty powerful heroes like Thor and the Thing and Wolverine and a whole bunch of them, and that on its own is dope. But they also gamma mutated Deadpool so that he is now Hulkpool, and he and Bob decide to head off to do their own thing. They head to Thunder's base and use her time machinery, and Bob sends Hulkpool back through time with the intention of crushing his normal weak Deadpool self. Because, I don't know, I guess paradoxes don't exist here. Instead, Bob accidentally sends Hulkpool on a trip through time, starting in 1717 on board a pirate ship where Ben Grimm, the Thing, has taken on the role of Blackbeard. Hulkpool joins him as his first mate, and they face off against a giant squid until Bob sends them back even further and they come face to face with Devil Dinosaur. After that whole chaotic journey, all 3 of them are time displaced to the Wild West where, of all people, they run into Hawkeye. Hulkpool travels again, but this time he ends up at the exact moment when Captain America and Bucky Barnes are in the process of completing the mission where Bucky tragically passes away, quote unquote, because we know what actually happens. And Hulkpool stops the whole thing from happening in the first place. Not only that, but he helps Cap take down the Red Skull and Germany's leader in one go. Not bad. He stops Matt Murdock from getting covered in toxic waste, Doctor Strange from getting in his car crash, the Fantastic Four from going to space, Donald Blake from becoming Thor, Peter Parker from being bit by a spider, Tony Stark from being taken hostage, and Bruce Banner from being gamma irradiated. All before he finally faces himself from the day before, only to find out that he's created a whole new timeline and that pirate Ben Grimm became the first president of the United States, and Bob is hailed as a god. Number 7. Venompool. Venompool hails from Earth 90211 from a reality stuck in the 1980s. In the story, the Beyonder decided to live the life of the party, and Spider-Man is still bonded with the Venom symbiote. Well, when Deadpool is hired by Galactus to kill the Beyonder, Deadpool tracked down his target to a nightclub, but found he was enticed into the Beyonder's partying lifestyle, getting Jerry curls in the process. While hanging out with the Beyonder in a flying limousine, because of course, Spider-Man breaks into the car out of nowhere and demands Beyonder remove the symbiote costume from him. In a freak moment, Spider-Man is attacked by the limo driver, and the symbiote ends up bonding with Deadpool instead. After a while, the Beyonder got sick of the Deadpool/symbiote amalgamation and ditches him, which you can imagine didn't sit very well with Venompool. He ends up going back to his mission and tries to bring down the Beyonder with a weapon called the Recton Expungifier. There's a lot to this story, but I don't want to rob you the satisfaction of reading it yourself, so we're moving on. Number 6. Gwenpool. Gwenpool came from a universe a lot like ours, meaning superheroes were all fictional characters in her world with origins and stories printed in comic books. Well, Gwen was obsessed with them. Thanks to a series of events, when she wound up in the Marvel universe, she put on a costume and became a mercenary as Gwenpool. Gwen is a regular human, but she knew all this was fictional inside a comic book, which allows her to completely break the fourth wall, which has helped her snag victories on multiple occasions, not to mention the fact that she knows everything about pretty much every hero. Her knowledge that everything is in a comic book also allows her to completely detach from anyone she is hired to take down, making her a pretty effective merc. Despite that, Gwen has grown to care for the people that inhabit her adopted universe, though she continues to believe that she is a fictional character in a comic book. Gwen's chief enemy is MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing. Gwen was part of MODOK's mercenary group for a short time until the boss realized that Gwen possessed no actual skills at all, making him pretty peed off. Gwenpool is awesome, and she has the ability to bring people into the space between comic panels, which is just a level of meta that I'm not ready for right now. At number 5 is Carol Danvers. Whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there is no denying this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from Marvel's Kree negabands. This basically means she was given superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for 24 hours before getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others, self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of this is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds. This extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, and transmute matter. She can create energy constructs and even boost up her already OP abilities. And at number 4 is the Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk show up on this list. The gamma-powered Green Goliath has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and being able to shake the multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually literally cannot die, coming back from the below place through green doors. Actually, in that story we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential, with the reveal of the Titan personality that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. And at number 3 is the Scarlet Witch. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees and even completely end a few of them, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before wiping a ton of them out. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. Now this was boosted up by the gift or curse of chaos magic given to her by Chthon, the old god of chaos, which was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morrigan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. Most magic users could make this list, but few of them can do what the Scarlet Witch can do. And at number 2 is Thor. Thor Odin's son, the Asgardian god of thunder, is one of the most powerful heroes on the Avengers roster. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key elements of that is whether Thor can handle the situation alone. In both the comics and the MCU, Thor and the Hulk are repeatedly given reasons to not be able to show up so that certain storylines can actually be compelling. Specifically, I'm talking about Civil War, where Thor had to deal with Ragnarok back home on Asgard, and that was all because if he was on Earth during Civil War, whoever had him on their side would automatically win. Being the son of Odin the Allfather and Gaia, an old god, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mom. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable. Not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in the possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and, especially recently, he keeps getting more and more power boosts, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he's Allfather Thor, which gives him the Thor Force. And he's gone even beyond that when he became the Herald of Galactus. There's a lot more to Thor, but I think I've said enough. And finally, in at number 1 is the Sentry. With the power of a million exploding suns, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he is even cooler than Superman, and you can get at me in the comments for that. The Golden Sentry Serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just straight up teleport, and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis which allows him to shine brighter than the sun, turn completely invisible, and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level whole city blocks. He also has psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase memories, and stop the Hammer of Thor. He also has biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, give others cancer. Speaking of the Void, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when the Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being somehow got a huge power boost. Number 10, Spider-Man Punisher. On Earth 71928, location of the What If Peter Parker Became the Punisher story, Peter's life remained pretty much the same as Earth 616 Peter, that is, until the night Uncle Ben's life was drawn to a close. Instead of following the classic story, Peter caught and dispatched the killer using the same weapon that took his uncle's life. Now Peter tried to avoid going full murderous Punisher at first, trying to go his normal route, but since criminals are criminals and they always come back, and he knows how much more permanent of a solution it is to just take them out, he went full force into that lifestyle. He carried the blam blam that took his Uncle Ben's life, as well as other weaponry with multiple different types of ammunition that allowed him to take down the Sinister Six with ease, and he was even able to save Gwen Stacy. Going by Punisher Spider, his suit also took a skull logo instead of the traditional spider logo due to the fact that the spider that gave him his powers was a noble false widow, which has a cephalothorax that looks like a skull, and it's not because he wanted to look like the Punisher. I promise. Number 9, Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara. Instead of getting bitten, Miguel's DNA was biologically mixed with the spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly addicted to a future substance by his employer. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel was still granted many of the same abilities at a pretty similar level. One thing that differs largely is Miguel's spider sense. He doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses similar to someone like Daredevil. But further straying from the 616 Peter Parker, Miguel has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him. For example, he possesses an incredible level of super speed as well as telepathic communication abilities. His webs are also organic, which differs from Spider-Man's web shooters, and he also has fangs and claws on his fingers and toes that he can use in combat. But on top of all those powers, Miguel is from the year 2099. which means obviously that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal, mainly focusing around his suit, which is incredibly durable and has an artificial intelligence, which is just cool. Number 8. Spider's Man. In Spider-Geddon number 3 of 2018, we are introduced to Spider's Man, which is a colony of thousands of radioactively powered spiders who, in a moment of absolute horror, consumed a high school boy by the name of, let me just check my notes here. Oh, Peter Parker, when he fell into their enclosure at Horizon Labs. After consuming Peter, something strange happened. Instead of the spiders just going about their lives, the whole gaggle of spiders gained a sort of hive mind, and they took on the form of Peter himself and began fighting crime in the aptly named Cruel York of Earth 11580. Now, other than his usual Spider-Man powers and the benefits of being a swarm of spiders, the colony is also able to poison its victims with a bite, or if they're hungry for power, devour them whole, and it's incredibly hard to actually de-life this version of Spider-Man, as even a single spider of the thousands who make up this being survives. It means that technically, Spider-Man is also still alive, and it can and will eventually multiply to rebuild itself. Himself? Their self? One of those. You know what I'm saying. Number 7. Poison. One never truly forgets their first love. And that's apparently true for formless, tar-like, brain-eating aliens too. Ever since the first time Venom and Spider-Man bonded together, that pesky symbiote would continuously try to merge with Peter Parker, but he would only get about halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Venom finally gets what he wants? In the What If Spider-Man the Other story, we get to find out. After Peter is semi-defeated by Morlun and cocoons himself under Brooklyn Bridge, he's offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider God. But instead of allowing this like he does in the normal continuity, Peter refuses and is instead stuck inside of his cocoon like half alive. Now you cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses the vulnerability of his soulmate and completely ditches his current host, Mac Gargan, and he goes to intercept Peter's body. And after months and months of struggling inside the cocoon, monstrously breaking down Peter Parker, Venom fully bonds to Peter. Now, the pair are truly one, which is something Venom always wanted, with all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, which include being able to replicate itself and host more than one body. He can also produce stingers that are strong enough to pierce Luke Cage's skin, which is insane, and the newly dubbed being known as Poison was even able to resurrect Gwen Stacy in a form that seems to take after Venom's offspring Carnage, although I'm not too sure about that one. Number 6. The Amazing Spider. It appears that Uncle Ben leaving this plane of existence is actually a really good thing. Hear me out. See, on Earth 11638, Uncle Ben never loses his life, and instead, he helps train Peter Parker with his new Spider-Man powers, and eventually even helps him to form Parker Industries. Now things aren't all hunky-dory though, as you can probably guess. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure alternate versions of himself to this reality where he absorbs their powers to increase his own, making him the most powerful hero on the Earth and eliminating the need for any other superhero. See, that did take a very dark turn. But when he tried to do this to the Spider-Man from Earth 616, this powerful version of Peter loses his life and his soul is sent to Hell, where, with the assistance of the Infernal Hulk, he is fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Spider. Now that's not the Gwen Stacy Ghost Spider, but a Ghost Rider Spider, which is just fun to say, and that's what I'm gonna go with. Ghost Rider, for any who don't know, is insanely powerful. He has been called in to deal with the Hulk and has even gone toe-to-toe with Galactus. So, this Spider-Man Ghost Rider, or Spider Ghost Rider, which I said I was gonna call him, I'm getting mixed up with words now, is no joke. He's no joke at all. Plus, he looks really cool.
Halfway through into number 5, Archie Andrews. Okay, whoa. Hold on. Before you start raging at me in the comments, just please hear me out. I doubt anyone actually listened to that, but you know what? You may think that this is ridiculous and that I'm just trying to be a shit disturber. And while that is one of my favorite pastimes, Archie and the gang have actually been canon in the Marvel Comics since June of 1994. Archie Meets the Punisher is a one-shot comic and intercompany crossover written by Batten Lash, and it was published jointly by Archie Comics and Marvel Comics and features the Punisher mistaking Archie Andrews for a criminal that he's been hunting. Then, when he realizes that he was wrong, he works with Archie to rescue Veronica after she had been kidnapped. And you know what? Since Archie has been a superhero multiple times in his comics, this instantly makes Archie a canon Marvel superhero. But with the comics being used as a plot device as well in Riverdale Season 6 to explain their multiverse, well, those would also by proxy be canon, meaning that Archie, being another Marvel Superman but with a weakness to palladium instead of to kryptonite, is a thing. Until they got rid of his weakness. Yeah, that was also a thing. Yeah, that's a pretty unstoppable hero if you ask me. He can't fly, but I mean, again, plot armor.
Number 4. Storm. On part 1 of this list, I talked about how Magneto was unstoppable after Uranos' invasion. How even after seemingly being killed, Magneto just got back up. Well, he wouldn't actually have been able to keep going if it wasn't for Storm and their weird, kinda sexy team up in their fight against Uranos. But this isn't the only time that Storm has become unstoppable. There are a few others that stick out in my memory. There is the time that she was infected by the Children of the Vault's technology, which threatened to overtake her body like a virus. This happened actually pretty recently, within the last few years. Her brush with the deadly tech left Storm comatose, temporarily, until she was revived by the combined efforts of Jean Grey and Emma Frost in their own giant-size X-Men comic, which they shared together. However, Storm was still very unwell after this and left with an estimated 1 month to live. While Krakoa has the capacity to resurrect any fallen mutants, or anyone else that they feel so inclined to bring back at this point, Storm refused to take this easy way out. She would not just lay down and surrender to death. Why? Because Storm is a badass, that's why. And also I think because she felt it undermined the value of life to do so, which she was not here for, and honestly, I want to back her up on that one. Instead, Storm attempted to fight back against the infection, venturing into the often bigger on the inside lab known as the World in her own giant-size issue in an attempt to find something that might help her. Storm and her teammates did succeed in this, separating the virus from Storm and restoring her health, and proving that even in the face of death, Storm generally refuses to back down.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Squirrel Girl. Okay, I mean, there's a whole series called The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. So I think that you kind of deserve to be on the list. The solo series debuted in January of 2015 and ran for 8 issues and was relaunched in October of 2015 as part of Marvel's all new, all different Marvel branding, and was published through to November of 2019 with 50 issues for a total of 58. Both series were written by Ryan North, but in issue number 4 of volume 1, Squirrel Girl literally stops Galactus from coming after Earth by being friends with him. I mean, come on. You're literally unable to sit there and tell me that this doesn't make her deserving of this list. Bro, she didn't even have to fight him, for God's sakes. It's actually insane, dude. She just talked the Devourer of Worlds into not going after Earth. Plus, I know that you all love Squirrel Girl, okay? I may not have been here for a while, okay, but I know that much. I also know that saying anything against the Hulk will get me mean DMs for 3 years, but hey, at least you love Squirrel Girl. And honestly, after reading this issue, I have to say I agree. It's pretty freaking nuts. Yes, I made the pun, alright? You were all waiting for it, I hope.
Number 2, Punisher. The Punisher truly is a man who never backs down. I mean, we even see this bizarrely enough reflected in his interaction in the comics with Archie Andrews, who was also on this list. Punisher is willing to venture kind of into a totally different world in order to apprehend a criminal. And he succeeds, after of course mistaking Archie for the criminal, but that of course is easy to do when you consider how similar he looks to the man that Punisher was after. Punisher is so committed to catching the evildoer, he resorts to food fight tactics. And for Frank Castle, who often prefers to fight with guns, you better bet that's commitment. That's unstoppable when you're willing to throw a cake at someone.
And finally, in at number 1, Scarlet Witch. Considering how the entirety of House of M is meant to be about how she changed reality, I think it's fairly safe to say that she's a powerful hero, even if she isn't a hero all the time. Like in Multiverse of Madness, for example, when she somehow was able to send demons and monsters across different dimensions to attack America Chavez, but couldn't just go to those dimensions herself. Even if she was a villain in this scenario, she was still able to take on the Illuminati from their universe and beat them all fairly easily, proving that not only is she an extremely powerful mutant, whether she's on either side, but also that falling boulders can kill a Captain Marvel, and are also therefore the most dangerous obstacle or weapon in the Marvel universe. The only limit to Wanda's abilities in any incarnation really is her brain, which is like my one gripe with Multiverse of Madness, since her whole point of taking America's powers for herself was in case her kids got sick and died again. But like, you've turned a whole city into your own personal TV show and brought your dead Infinity Stone powered boyfriend back for it. So I think you can handle a little chicken pox if your sons get caught or get whatever you think they're gonna get in whatever universe. But that's also a way for them to explain why she didn't do it, since the movie was all about setting up the premise of incursions. But either way, come on, Scarlet Witch, yeah, it's the thumbnail, I think. I don't know. I actually don't know.